part of me feels like I just want to build something big. And I don't think I did that in the last company. And so there's just that hunger to almost prove myself a little bit. Momentum is the only thing that matters at a startup, I think.
Yeah.
And like you can't kill your own momentum. What's more important at a startup is you make 7 or 8 decisions and get most of them right than to just make 2 or 3 decisions and get the second or third one right. That's okay if you're the leader of the market.
Yeah.
It's not okay if you're trying to catch up from behind. Most people, I think, buy crypto because it's almost like gambling, right? Crypto market news hasn't been great. You know, we had FTX, we had Luna, we had all of these situations where crypto's like, I think, reputation in the general industry is that it's a scam.
Okay, so James, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thank you.
It's good to see you back in the office.
Yes.
Yeah, the paper team has been in and out for the last, month or two?
Yep. We've probably gone 1 month in F Inc. and then 2 weeks back in the WeWork, and then we came back for a week, and then we went back for another 2 weeks now.
So what's been happening?
Man, like, you know, WeWork is always this place where when we first started the company, we had 2 people in my bedroom. And then when we moved up to 4, we moved into like a tiny WeWork space. And then as we've been expanding, now we're about 12 people. We have like a corner office. And in the beginning, honestly, I was a little surprised by everyone why they were hating on WeWork, because I was like, this is a great service, great product.
Yeah.
But as kind of the SF's been coming back alive a little bit, and there are more people coming back into the WeWork office, everything's just breaking down. The bathroom hasn't been fixed for 2 months.
You're really putting him on blast.
Exposing everyone.
The kombucha, you know, that's one of the benefits.
We were at the Berkeley WeWork. No kombucha.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
no
true.
kombucha, and the worst part is just like heating is also not there. So
It's cold too.
It's cold. It's
man.
cool. So everybody's wearing jackets in the office, and then the Wi-Fi doesn't work either. So
Y'all don't got Wi-Fi in the
No
office?
Wi-Fi, no heat. Like
no
They don't even got the
bathroom,
necessities.
bathroom, no
No drinks.
kombucha.
Dude, he's going to come back in 2 weeks and say the roof flew off.
Yeah,
Is there at least running water?
there's running water.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they got a game machine.
They don't have a game machine. No.
Which building are you guys in?
I'm in the
44?
44 Montgomery.
Okay. Well, they have a ping pong
They
table.
have a game machine?
There is a ping pong table. That's about-
2 Embarcadero Center has like an NBA jam.
Got it.
Yeah.
So to back up a little bit, you're building paper.
Yes.
What is paper?
We're basically building infrastructure for on-ramping. And I know that's like kind of a technical term, so I can dive into a little bit. Wallets and payments are the 2 things we're focused on right now. When someone tries to buy a NFT today, the experience is pretty difficult. You have to understand that you need a wallet. And so how do you set up a wallet? You go use some browser extension, iPhone app that gives you essentially a seed phrase that you have to memorize down. You lose that seed phrase, everything's gone.
Yeah.
And then you have to on-ramp crypto. So where do you go on-ramp crypto? You go to Coinbase, go to Kraken, whatever exchange you're familiar with, and then you KYC, get some crypto into that exchange, and then you have to transfer that crypto into your wallet that you just set up. You gotta have all these strings of addresses. And then if you happen to be buying an NFT that's not priced in, let's say, Ethereum or Solana, the native chain currency, you now have to buy NFT token that's native to whatever that NFT is. I'll give you an example. We helped Deadmau5 with his NFT called Head5.
Wow.
It's on Polygon. And so you need wrapped ETH to be able to buy this thing. And so the user has to do everything I just said before and also figure out how to bridge ETH from Ethereum to Polygon, and then also take that bridged ETH and swap that with Matic gas tokens. So this whole thing, it's like 8 different steps. They created this gigantic Notion file that was like educating people on how to do it, and their conversion was terrible. And so now if you go to, head5.io, which is Deadmau5's thing, there's only one button. The button says mint. It leads people to a paper checkout link. And with paper, the customer puts in an email, puts in their credit card, and they can buy the thing. None of this like crazy crap with seed phrases, layer 2s, gas, on-ramping, KYC.
How much of that did you get? How much
Gas I got.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What is gas?
The gas fees?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Because
though.
gas used to be wild, right? Like
Yeah.
the fees.
Yeah, bro. It's like $10 in Big Sur, or like $7 like per gallon.
Okay.
I said $10 in Big Store. You
No,
were
but
like,
I
yeah.
watched one of my buddies mint an NFT. Like, I don't know. This was a year or two ago.
Yeah.
But he would like, it would say like $120 gas fee. He'd refresh it, go up to like $3,000.
Yeah. I don't think it ever got up to $3,000, but it's pretty
You
crazy.
gonna call me out on that?
So at what point did you guys realize that this is what you wanted to build? Did it used to be something else?
It used to be something else. My background is in creator stuff. So
Really?
yeah, my last company was called Revlo. We were trying to build a loyalty system for creators.
Interesting.
We were mostly servicing creators on Twitch, and I think at one point, this is like 2015, we had, I think, 80% of all the top 100 creators on Twitch using our loyalty system, which was super cool.
Yeah.
We ended up getting acquired by Twitch in 2016, and that's kind of sorry.
Everyone in this office has been
Everyone's
acquired by
Twitch,
Twitch.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I first met Furcon and the F Inc guys, you know. And so I was there for 2.5 years, 2 years actually, no, 2 years, and I wanted to kind of take what we built before, now like want to do it again. And when we built this like live streaming subscription product for creators, and as we were building it, blockchain started to become more relevant.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, wait, it's pretty cool that the network that a creator owns doesn't have to be owned by the platform. Because, if you think about all the creators today, they're very reliant on the platforms that they work with.
The algorithms.
Yeah, the algorithms, we're all part of this game. Like, how do you use the algorithm to get up there? And if a platform decides that you as a creator is no longer something that fits with their values, they can just remove you. And if they do that, you're kind of screwed out of luck. Yeah. And so I thought like blockchain being a public ledger that holds this information is pretty powerful. What if every creator's social graph of their paid subscribers or even free fans were actually on the blockchain? And then no one would have to be censored or deplatformatized at any time, because if they do, you just take that graph somewhere else to a different platform that allows you to feed it in. And I think that's like really powerful. And so we kind of try to build a membership product for that problem. We got like about 80 to 100 creators signing up for it, which is super fun. Everybody was like, a year ago, everybody was excited about crypto. They want to try this thing. But the problem that I just kind of described earlier was facing every one of our creators. They're like, I'm interested in this tech, but none of my fans can even buy my NFTs. Like they come on, they have to set up a wallet. And so we try to kind of build all this stuff in-house. We looked at a lot of our sort of competitors, or not competitors, like infrastructure providers who are providing this kind of on-ramp infrastructure. And none of them are really good at the time. And so we ended up building our own. And so when we built our own, a lot of folks in the tech space took notice and they came to us and was like, we don't really need all the other really cool creator features you've built. We just want the spin up wallets with email, buy NFTs with credit card, and like sell us that. We don't need like membership creation. We don't need art generation, all this kind of stuff. And so that's kind of how we started
Why
working.
did they not want that? Wouldn't that be useful?
Those are useful for like the creators themselves, but we end up working now with a lot of platforms. And platforms, like, they don't really care about membership tokens. They're using NFTs for like in-game assets. They're building competitors to what we were building before, which is like they might be building a creator platform or a brand platform. Like, we're really big fans of one of our customers, Uncut. They basically work with creators to turn their podcasts actually into NFTs. Something to think about it for here. And they basically allow fans to support the creator by buying these NFTs, and then the money gets pooled into essentially like a DAO that then the people who own the NFTs for these podcasts can kind of decide where they want the creator to spend that money.
Gotcha.
It's not 100%, but like a small portion. So I think there's a lot of cool things here around, now the creator owns this graph of their fans. That's decentralized. And so, yeah.
So a technical question, which might be very dumb, but how would you store an hour-long video, for example, on a blockchain?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think there's a lot of different places that, different ways of doing it. So there's like the super, super decentralized way, which is like IPFS, and you put everything decentralized. And then performance is generally a little bit more poor, but people are working on that. I know Third Web's working on stuff like that. I know like Pinata is always trying to get better, and even Alchemy and some of these like infrastructure providers are getting better. But at the same time, the other way of people are doing it, which is faster loading time, is they actually just store the video on a local server, like an AWS server, and then just point the NFTs metadata towards that address. So that's like not entirely decentralized. And I think that's kind of like the interesting thing about crypto to me is not everybody, lots of people seem to be on like two ends. You either say everything should be decentralized or everything should be a database.
Yeah.
But I think like the exciting part of crypto is essentially somewhere in between, where the parts that should be decentralized are, and like benefits of, for example, being able to verify the ownership on some scarce digital asset, whether that's like a gaming skin you spent hundreds of dollars, $1,000 buying, or a graph to a creator like what we talked about. Then there are certain things that don't really need to be decentralized. Like if I buy a hamburger and I get a receipt for that hamburger, does that receipt need to be decentralized on chain? Not really. And so like I think there's properties of blockchain around verifying ownership, around the decentralization that matters for certain use cases, but and a lot of times that can even be hidden away in the background without having to expose that to the customer. And I think that's like one of the things that we're the most excited about is crypto blockchain, the back end, but on the front end to the customer, it might just seem like a normal digital asset.
So to take this creator example for a second. So let's say I'm like a YouTuber. I make college vlogs. I'm thinking of Elliot Choi right now.
Okay.
What is the value in having my videos on the blockchain being decentralized?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's less about the videos being on the blockchain, but rather the fans who support you being able to claim that having supported that video or you as a creator. So I think back to an example, like I play a lot of games, and I used to support this streamer when he was like really small, and we had like 10 viewers, and I was one of the first 10 viewers. And I just had a friend the other day who also now loves watching this streamer. And I was kind of like, I actually support this creator when he was like super small. And he's like, oh, cool. Like, tell me more. And I was like, oh, like I paid for his coaching lessons when he was like trying to make money. I like supported him as one of the first like subs.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let me try to find proof of this so I can show you like it's a big part of my identity. I was like, okay, let me look at my PayPal receipts. Like, here, look at my PayPal receipt. Like, it's not that cool, Like, that's not a collectible. That's not like, if you think about that, like in maybe a more relatable example, like if you saw LeBron or Jordan or any of these athletes when they were, before they were big, and you got them to sign a basketball, or you had like tickets to one of your favorite artists' thing.
Yeah,
that's a lot cooler to keep as a memorabilia and show off as part of your identity than like a receipt from a payment processor. And that's kind of like the world we're in right now, where, I think that a lot of this predicates, I don't like this buzzword, but in a way, like, what is the metaverse, right? Like, is metaverse like this one place everybody hangs out, or is metaverse just the fact that our digital identity is more important to us? And in a world where our digital identity is more important to us, where the people we support on the internet, the people that we spend time with on the internet, the achievements that we earn on the internet, the things we buy, like, you buy nice watches, nice cars, these things like kind of indicate some social status.
Yeah.
If those things matter on the internet as your digital identity, you need some proof that you actually did get those things. Because it's really easy to just copy paste digital things today on the internet.
Sure.
And so, I could screenshot a thing and say, oh yeah, I was like,
you can screenshot something.
Yeah, and you're like, yeah, that's me. But, if it's not actually on chain, then it's not verifiable. And so I think that's where, I kind of get a long answer to sort of why does it matter to be online. I think it matters because for the viewers or for the supporters, it gives them something that they can keep, show off as part of the digital identity. And for the creator, now that creator still has my direct wallet address, which is probably tied to an email or some kind of identity in the future that they can always kind of message me. And then that like identity is kind of kept as well.
So let's take, like, what does that actually look like? Let's take our podcast, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If we wanted to make it so that we dropped something so that, we have, the hopes is that at some point, 6 months to a year, the podcast will be much bigger than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to kind of do something related to an NFT or a blockchain,
to
be able to let our early viewers show proof that they followed us,
Yeah.
what does that actually look like? Are we talking about doing an NFT drop, or is there something we can do more than that?
Yeah, I think the simplest way to get started is an NFT. There's like multiple ways of decentralization, right? Like one way you can say is we're gonna do an NFT drop, and every week, there's like one or two, however many of the podcast episode badges that you kind of create. You can use Third Web to create the NFT. You could use platforms that already do it for you, and then you will be able to have your fans either buy the NFT with a credit card through paper, or to support you guys, or just airdrop it for free to their wallet address, which is also something that we support. And then as you guys are getting bigger over time, those original fans who hold those collectibles, there's things you can do. You can kind of say, hey, I think this is the other really interesting piece about crypto. One is you can always go back to those customers and say, now you can get access to special behind the scenes content if you hold this NFT, and that customer or fan can either hold it themselves or transfer it to someone else. Alternatively, you can also partner with other people. And that's like interoperability is this also other buzzword that gets brought up a lot in blockchain. But this is the idea that everybody can access your graph and provide benefits to the people who hold those things. Someone could go and say, well, people who are big fans of the doc are probably also big fans of this new form of or this other podcast that is targeted towards young founders or folks looking to get bigger. And then the people who hold those NFTs can then show proof of ownership and then get some benefits from those partners. And so, when you think about like credit cards is probably the simplest way to think about this like relationship. It's like with credit cards, if you had like a Chase Sapphire Reserve or Amex Platinum, you get a lot of benefits from different partners. But those like benefits only occur if the BD guy at Amex talks to another BD person at some other company.
Yeah.
With the blockchain, that graph is open. So now anybody can say, if you're an Amex Plat owner or you are a doc supporter, they can get whatever benefits. And so it provides sort of just more utility because it's a way for them to get customers.
Do you know about Dapper Labs?
Dapper, yeah.
How do you differentiate this between an investment and a collectible? Because their issue was when it dropped, all these things were worth so much money, these NBA highlights, these moments, right? Yeah. And as soon as the value of Ethereum started dropping and crypto, the value of all of the collectibles dropped. Yeah. And Dapper's claim was, well, these are collectibles. We're offering you things like courtside seats for certain packages, whatever you own. There's a collector score. They tried to make it a collectible atmosphere, and they lost like at least half of their user engagement because people were viewing it as an investment. Yeah. And they were pissed when the value dropped. Like, are you seeing that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So like, I think there's like two parts of crypto, like speculative, where it's like an investment. And then the other part is like utility, right? And I think it's unfortunately where speculation ends up driving a lot of utility. And so it's like, I think about Ethereum. All this research into zero knowledge proof rollups, all this like research into like MPC security, none of this would have mattered if there was no speculative money in the space. Most people I think buy crypto because it's almost like gambling, right? It's like a more volatile asset class.
Is that why you buy crypto?
Is that why I buy crypto? Because it's like gambling?
No, because you have a good reason for buying crypto.
What is my reason for buying crypto? Tell me.
Well, you believe in the technology and you view it as a long-term investment, yeah?
I do, yeah. So I dollar cost average because I do think that at some point Ethereum and Bitcoin specifically will be more mainstream use case. Well, I think Bitcoin will just be a good store of value. I think there will always be enough people on the platform making the value go higher so that it would beat out the dollar of just like leaving it. It would beat out leaving it in a bank. Mm-hmm. And then for Ethereum, I just see a lot of really smart people that are my friends building on top of Ethereum. Yeah. So it's almost like betting on them.
Yeah, totally.
Betting is the wrong word, but
yeah, no. I mean, it's I think the reality is a lot of the money in this space is betting. Like you're not like folks buy things because they think money will go up, not because they care about whatever utility the thing brings. I think, but that's like kind of why I think the customers that we work with is very different compared to people buying speculative asset. For example, we work with a big gaming studio called Tilting Point. And they had this chess game, right? It's just a chess game. But in the chess game, instead of like, normally when you play games, you can buy skins. So now in this game, the skins and the champions and the power-ups are NFTs instead of, just a database entry. So the question is like, why does that matter?
Yeah.
Well, two things. One is if you don't play the game anymore, if you don't want to play the game anymore, or you have friends that you want to play the game, you can just now actually transfer them the skin or the asset, which is kind of cool because I've spent thousands of dollars in games at this point. And whenever I stop playing or try to bring a friend in, it's always like, shit, like, let me really convince you to like play here. Versus I would love to be like, hey, let me just give you one of the things that I have to help you get started. Yeah. That's kind of like, in real life, right? If you really like a sport, you want to bring your friends into the sport, you don't go and say, hey, you have to start from scratch. You're like, hey, I'll lend you a racket or I'll lend you some like equipment or like, whereas like the world today and a lot of these digital playgrounds are super closed. They're very much like 100% control goes to the publisher, the platform. And I think that has to change. And I think that's why it's like being a little bit difficult to get a lot of adoption and why crypto a lot of times today is driven by developers is ultimately the experience is actually better for consumers. Like imagine every digital asset you own and you actually owned it versus someone else can revoke that ownership away from you anytime. That's like it's strictly better for you because you can now like maybe you're like, it's like I own this bottle of water. I'm not going to go on the secondary market and sell it. Like that doesn't make sense. It's not a speculative asset. But at least it's like, I can drink it if if you want to drink this, you can drink this. Like my point is if the virtual world is like the physical world, it's where you actually own the things that you have under your account. It's strictly better because it unlocks things like transferring and selling, which doesn't exist very much at all in the digital world today. And so, but the problem is we're so used to this world where the platforms control everything that we don't even think about the benefits of those pieces. And so developers who are coming in and trying to build in the space, they're competing against these behemoths, hoping that it's kind of interesting, right? Like I know like a lot of Web3 games today are not as exciting as like AAA games. They're very much like, you saw like, the Bored Apes guys just made a game and it's just like it's got a tunnel racer where like, and then, it's like, there was 100 million, they've raised like what, like, I don't remember how much they raised, but hundreds of millions.
Do you know how much they spent on it?
I don't know how much they spent on it.
Because it's really expensive to make these games, right? At a good quality.
Yeah, but this game that they made was not that good quality. I think that's the thing. It's like a Flash game. It's like a Flash game that reminds you of like a game you played in like 2010 or something. But you're right. And that big game, like these good games take a lot of time to build.
Yeah.
And so I think like if these games can get to a similar quality as the games that are built under these closed ecosystems, then I do think a large percentage of consumers will choose to play those games because they don't feel like everything they own is like locked behind that developers will,
Yeah, I also think blockchain games will sometimes, they will over-index on the fact that they're a blockchain game. It's like saying, hey, use Instagram, it's built on React Native.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
AWS backend or whatever. And they think that just because it's a blockchain game, that's inherently enough to bring in users that are sticky. And
yeah, I think that's the problem, right? It's like it does bring in users, but those users are not there to play the game. They're there to speculate on the asset. And that's like, we've taken a pretty unique approach on this. Like we're focused. We try to focus our product on customers who are trying to focus on the utility of the crypto versus the speculative asset of crypto.
Explain that. You said they're not focused on the game. They're focused.
Yeah. So like, when I say I like to play Teamfight Tactics or when I like to play Overwatch, I'm playing because I like the gameplay loop.
Yeah.
Right. Or even when I support a creator, I'm supporting the creator because I like their music. I like their art.
Sure.
A lot of times in crypto today, people will buy a creator's thing not because they're like a big fan of this creator, I love their work, I want to support them, but more like I think this thing they made will be like 5x next week. And so you just have a lot like that. That's what I mean by like speculative.
This goes back to the Dapper thing.
Yeah.
Of like I'm buying the highlight because I think it's going to be worth a lot, not because I love this player.
Or I love this moment, or like I want to get access to the court. Like, these speculators sometimes don't even care, right? They're traders. Now, I don't want to like say that they're not a good segment because they're ultimately the reason why this industry has gotten started in the first place.
Yeah.
I just think like for us, our like segmentation, we have the only solution on the market that is more like customizable and white labeled compared to everyone else. And the reason why we did that was because when we service customers like Even, Uncut, Tilting Point, these like games who are trying to onboard people to say, hey, you should play this thing because the game is fun, or because you want to support this artist or this podcaster. They're not pulling people in to say this crypto. So underneath, it's just an email address, and you're using a credit card to buy like a $20, $30 NFT that represents a album, represents a game asset. And then afterwards, they introduce you into the crypto, kind of tell you, hey, you can actually like trade this in other places. And that's like the big, I think, approach difference for us versus our other competitors who are more like, before you can like do anything with our on-ramp infrastructure, you have to first create a wallet. Here's what a wallet is. Then and so like they put crypto super up front because they're like targeting the more like traders, where we're trying to target more of the general audience who doesn't care if it's crypto.
That's so interesting because Topps did an MLB drop. This was during COVID for like their first NFT packs. And they made everyone, you had to buy wax.
Oh, yeah.
I assume you guys know.
Yeah.
And then you had to have a MetaMask wallet. But we're all like, we're like baseball fans. Like we live in the 60s. Like no one under the age of 50 watches this. And me.
Yeah.
And it's like
me, he said.
But it's like we don't own, like no one owns crypto, right? Yeah. Nobody even knows, very few people even knew about Coinbase. And they're asking us to buy like wallets and wax. And we're like, yo, what is happening? I'm like trying to put my credit card. It's just getting rejected.
Vishal's like, take my money. I want to
like
be scammed.
We're literally, it's like 0.2 wax. We're like, yo, what is happening here?
That's exactly it. It's like, it should just be, you create an email account and then you spend $20. And whether it's crypto underneath or not, you don't have to be exposed to that until, let's say one day you're like, you know what, this collectible is kind of cool. I wonder if other people want to buy it. Then, you can connect your email to a different marketplace that allows you to like list it or sell it.
So you're saying slowly evolve it where I'm getting more educated about it as we go along? Yeah,
or even I think there's like, this is kind of what I was saying with like onboarding versus like, is this the final, like what is the final destination? Is the final destination that everybody owns a wallet and everybody understands what crypto is and everybody understands layer 1, layer 2, gas? No, right? I think what I would love is if you actually, with these baseball cards, use your email, use your credit card. And then if you want to sell it to other people, there's all these websites that supports you just logging in with your email.
Yeah.
And then you can sell it for USD that you can then put into your bank account.
Yeah, I would love that too because I don't know where they exist now. I have like packs, all these cards I open, and I have no idea how to access it now.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we're trying to build, right? We're trying to build this like crypto in the back end. And on the front end, it's just all the stuff people are already familiar with. Because I think if crypto is truly going to be big, it can't be this like super niche thing that everybody needs to become super technical to understand. They should just email, credit card. Yeah, that's it.
So I have an idea now. I'm curious to hear what you think. We talk about potentially doing a live podcast at some point, or potentially doing a clothing brand, or like a merch drop in like months.
Yeah.
What if we put like a mint button? Mint $, like the doc as the currency name on our website. It would use paper, right? And so essentially all it would do is in the future they would be the only people to get access to merch. They'd be the only people who get invited to live podcasts, for example. I'm just trying to think about how we could use this in like the creator or how to use this in our use case.
What's the difference between that and Patreon?
Yeah, great question.
Like why use? And I'm asking. I mean,
that's a good question.
Yeah. And I think that's like the one way to think about the blockchain is just it's a public database. Maybe that's like one way to think about it. Okay. It's like if you were to do this on Patreon, Substack, YouTube, you run into the same platform issues where it's like, okay, Patreon can raise their rates. They can say 15%, 20%, 25%.
Yeah.
And you as a creator, like, what are you gonna do? You don't have your graph of fans. If you, for example, want another service to integrate, so like, let's say you guys do get really big and you're like, hey, this service, I want you to offer some benefits. Like maybe it's like, let's say it's like another clothing brand. The ones you want to do a collab with another clothing brand.
Sure.
Now it's like, okay, if you're a Patreon sub, you get 5% off. So then I guess you have to go to your Patreon wall, tell people, hey, look, make sure you use this code to like, on this website to do this. But then, if you truly only want your fans who are on Patreon to get some really unique benefits, there's no way for that clothing brand to verify that someone's a Patreon subscriber unless they built a Patreon integration. Whereas, in the case if they just own these NFTs, they don't need permission. They don't need anybody to give them access to that list. You can just tell them, hey, if anybody holds this token contract address, they can get these things. So like in terms of like, what's the difference? I think it's just if Patreon allowed you guys to access the exact list of your subscribers on Patreon and made it really easy for anyone to be able to connect to that graph and offer benefits to the customers, it would be the same. But, Patreon or Substack, their incentive is not really entirely aligned with the creator all the time. They're trying to make more money, so they might want to hike up rates. They might want to change conditions and rules. Whereas with the blockchain, they're not. That's not going to change.
What about the legal issues? Because like, do you know about Logan Paul's NFT drop at all?
Well, that's different.
That's different.
That's different because that's like him promising something and then abandoning, quote unquote, abandoning a project.
So that's less about the technical aspect.
That's much less about technical.
Okay.
That's just like him. That he could have put that on Amazon, right? He could have just said, "Hey, buy this thing, buy this game," because it was a game.
Yeah.
Right, and then just not made the game.
Because like the sentiment. I mean, I think you're aware of the sentiment of crypto and creators. Pumping crypto,
pumping and dumping, totally.
How do you set as you're marketing your company, right?
Yeah.
How do you separate the two?
Yeah, I it's tough. I'm gonna be honest. It's made it tough to a lot of things. I mean, the crypto market news hasn't been great. We had FTX, we had Luna, we had all of these situations where crypto's like, I think reputation in the general industry is that it's a scam, and I think like. When we think about we try to be pretty careful of who we work with and we try to kind of work with projects that are actually providing real utility in gaming, like, or creators actually doing cool things with their fans. And one kind of way to tell is also just the price of these things. A lot of the customers we work with a lot with developers and platforms versus creators directly.
Sure.
Their like ticket price is like $20 to $50. And so like you're not pumping and dumping a $20, $50 thing, Whereas when the speculative projects, they're like $700, $800, $1,000, $1,500, stuff. And so we did a really great drop this morning with like a creator, and she's like a very well-known artist, and her things were like $800 each. So they were a little bit more expensive, but she's also like from the fine arts community and all that kind of stuff. And so And so I think like over time from like a sales perspective too, as we're like working with customers, you kind of develop a better eye for like who's like pumping and dumping and who's actually trying to build something. And, we just try our best to only like to work with the projects that we think are actually.
So you're doing the due diligence on vetting these creators. Are you also offering, I guess, advice on how to execute these things? And just like what you explained, is that what you guys are offering?
Yeah. So like in terms of consulting or like, that kind of, we don't generally provide that. And the reason just being is it's most of our customers are platforms and brands. So like they are the ones who are building platforms that do consulting with those things. So for example, like we work with a couple of games, but we also work with this company called Fractal, Justin Consting. Yeah. So Justin's one of our investors, and his Fractal is also one of our customers, and they provide a lot of these like consulting services to their games, but we're like the infrastructure layer underneath. And so that's kind of the position we've taken, because ultimately, look, I've been in the creator industry for a long time, but I'm not a creator myself. I haven't. I mean, I've streamed a little bit on Twitch. I had like 40, 50 viewers. It was nice. People were watching me. Streamed Overwatch.
Nice. Were you good?
I was pretty good. I got up to Grandmaster. Just hit top 500 once, and then never did that again. But
so I stopped playing. I hit it, and I stopped playing.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like
is it hard to keep hitting it, or you rank once you get there?
No, so it's one of these things where if you get to like any of the top 500 or challenge, like you have to maintain a certain amount of like elo, and so like you have to keep winning. And so I did it really early on in the season when the pros haven't played that much yet, and so that's how I hit top 500.
Gotcha.
But then after that, I was like, I've peaked in my gaming career. I don't think I ever get better. But point is, it's like I don't think I've ever been a real creator, and so I've always been a developer. I've built stuff since I was young. My first thing I built was basically like, are you guys familiar with a game called MapleStory? Yeah.
Heard of it.
Heard of it? Anyway, so,
What is it?
It's like a MMORPG. So it's like, you just play as a character level up. So I was like building essentially bots for MapleStory. And like a lot of sort of, I've been building stuff since I was young. I built like when I was like studying I grew up in China and then moved to Canada and then went to the US for school. So when I was studying for like exams, I was like for the like SATs and all that kind of stuff, I was like, this is a cool opportunity. So I built like a cool learning app. So I've always been building stuff since I was young.
Yeah.
And I just felt like as we were like building these products, like ultimately I'm able to relate to the customers a lot more if I'm building for developers and builders as opposed to building for creators. And I'd rather people who are actual creators who also are developers be built for creators. And so, when we think about our DNA, like most of our team has technical background. When we think about our product, I think we have the most developer-friendly product because we're all developers ourselves. And when I was building creator companies, whether it was Revlo or the first version of this company, there's always this sense of imposter syndrome where you're like, jump on a customer call and they tell you something and you're like, this is a little bit different than like what I believe in. And then you're like, but it's important to build what the customer wants.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like end up in a lot of like decision paralysis because if you don't truly understand the customer, you just get pulled in different directions because every customer wants something different. Whereas with developers, it's like I'm able to have a much better discussion with them. And even if they say, hi, I want this thing, I can be like, hey, have you considered the alternative? Because these are the benefits of it. I can't have that kind of discussion with creators because I haven't been one. And so like I think, of all the teams out there we're like pretty uniquely positioned to solve this problem really well. And so that's why like, I'm pretty excited about building for the developers and not really trying to be something I'm not. I'm providing expertise on how to be like a better creator to creators.
Makes sense. And then how does Founders Inc. fit in, right? When you guys are thinking of strategy, advice, give us some good nuggets Furkan has maybe given you.
Yeah, I mean, Furkan's great. I think like on our cap table, he's one of the most helpful investors. We actually meet with him every week for about an hour and a half, depending on kind of how urgent things are. I think the thing with Furkan is one of the nuggets that I really like about him. He's kind of told me about the bell curve meme before it became a meme.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of times, especially when you have somewhat of a working experience at bigger companies, you try to fit things into these perfect frameworks. The whole first principle thinking, mental models, all the things that like Silicon Valley likes to kind of push people to. And I think those are really good in terms of like, when you're making a tough decision, it is important to like use that as a tool to make decisions. But sometimes, it's easy to lean into it too much. Like this customer segment doesn't necessarily fit exactly into my perfect mental model of segments.
Yeah. Should
we like service this customer or not? Or this person that we're looking to hire doesn't check all the boxes of what we believe is the perfect cultural fit. Should we like hire this person? And I think like there is always like an optimal world where everything goes exactly according to plan, but startups are really messy, right? Startups are really messy. Things are always changing all the time. Your strategy changes based on the market, changes based on competitors, changes based on what your customers are saying. And I think the thing that Furkan's driven into us early as like an investor is just focus on growth, focus on building momentum, and don't spend too much time being the guy with glasses in the middle, trying to like extrapolate and interpolate and like draw lines and make predictions, because ultimately the only thing that matters is your customers and whether or not they're bringing you business. And so that's something I think Furkan's really, really good at. It brings a lot of clarity. I think a lot of times I'd go into a meeting with him, feeling like, oh, I have like 50 million problems. Like, how me solve this? He'd be like, what really matters here?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah, you're right. Of the 50 million problems, maybe 2 matters. And we should just focus on those 2 problems.
And is that impacting how you're building the team? Because we know few of the people you have, Safwan.
Yeah.
Priya, you got some characters.
Yeah.
Out there.
I think like people with unconventional backgrounds are, I think, really great people. I think we've got a really strong team because people, who don't fit into these perfect boxes usually have a lot of hunger, a lot of curiosity, a lot of drive. And that's like what matters a lot more at startups. Like we've had, I've worked with when I was at Twitch, as part of Amazon. So we worked with a lot of really, really smart people who are really effective in large organizations. And those are usually people who are really good at explaining things in like very articulate ways that are packaged perfectly into boxes.
Yeah.
Because, in those environments, you're trying to make a number go from, hundreds of millions to hundreds of millions plus 2%. And so like the small things matter a lot more versus at a startup, you're just trying to survive. You're just trying to like beat a bigger competitor. And so, on tiring talent, I think a lot of what we focus on nowadays is, and like this is something I've learned over time, is seniority, experience, perfect mental frameworks are not actually that useful. They are useful in really important strategic decisions, but there are so many decisions that are not really important strategic decisions. And most time at a startup, you just got to go. And I think like Furkan kind of told me one thing, and going back to that I always keep close with me is, yes, if you have the perfect mental framework, you might be able to make the third decision you make more correct. But what's more important at a startup is you make 7 or 8 decisions and get most of them right than to just make 2 or 3 decisions and get the second or third one right. Because you just need to you just gotta be moving. Otherwise, you're spending all this time coming up with frameworks, analysis. You're just not gonna move. And like that's okay if you're the leader of the market.
Yeah,
it's not okay if you're trying to catch up from behind.
So what works at Twitch, but it doesn't work. And
I think those are actually some of the bad habits I had to shed a little bit. Like I the other day I was talking to my co-founder, and he's like, James, you're not a product leader at Twitch anymore. You are the CEO of a company. You got to just be doing whatever the company needs. Like, yes, I know you love thinking about product, thinking about like how we can make this user experience piece really good. But if ultimately what the company needs is something else, whether it's marketing or sales or like partnerships, you got to be spending your time doing that. Yes, it's messy, but you got to do it, right? And so, that's definitely a thing I've had to like unlearn a little bit.
I got you. Is that like similar advice you get from Justin Kahn too?
It's Justin. Justin is really, really good at marketing and growth. He's somebody I really look up to. I think I worked together with him during YC as well. Like my first company went through YC. That's how we first built the connection. Yeah, I think the best founders I've learned are the people who focus on growth and focus on driving momentum. It's like momentum is the only thing that matters at a startup, I think. And like you can't kill your own momentum, even if that means you're maybe doing some custom work for an enterprise customer that might not be exactly who you thought your perfect customer is.
Yeah.
Even if it means that, instead of, this perfect process you set up for sales, you're going to an event just to be able to catch this person between their speaking events. Like, it's like, like most things just don't end up playing out perfectly according to plan. You just got to kind of adapt and make momentum happen.
And then are you guys thinking about events at all? Like, I know Denver's coming up.
Yeah.
You've been to Denver. Yeah.
Are you a fan? Like Denver?
It was interesting. I had a lot of fun. I saw a lot of my friends there. It was so, I forget how it was laid out, but it was like, there was a castle, right? And there was like the main, like the hotel, the art lobby or art hotel.
Art hotel.
And so walking down that street, I would run into someone I knew from like some random place in the country. Like
really?
Block. Every block, it was like someone else I knew.
Wow.
Which was interesting.
Connected.
No, it was the same. Like I know very few people like, well enough. I know very few people.
5 people.
It's like the same like 10 people from like some of them are in New York, some of them from Canada, some of them are from Berkeley, some of them from SF. And I remember walking down, I was like, I did not know any of these people were going to be here.
Wow.
It's like, this is probably a security risk at some point. I just remember everyone got sick. So like I saw Twitter for like the week after, it was just everyone was like in bed. I had 104 fever. I went to the hospital. My friend had like 102 fever. He didn't get out of bed for a week.
Oh man.
And even now I saw like, for example, Rick Byrne, he was like, yo, I love ETH Denver, but like all of you guys get sick. So I am not going back this year.
Oh man, that's funny.
It's part of the reason I'm not going back this year.
Oh, really?
If I don't go back, it'll be because I just don't want to get sick the week after.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah, no, we're trying to do a little bit more. I think like crypto is also like, because of how small it is, I think relationships matter a lot. And I don't think I've ever been in another industry where even like with creators, I mean, it's like, it's a lot of like relationship building, but like this is even more important in crypto because it's so small and everybody is kind of like, it's there's some interesting parallels to gaming because I think there's this feeling of like a tribe a little bit, because everybody else kind of looks at the space and say, you guys are weirdos. You guys are kind of like bad. And it's a kind of gaming in the early days too. I remember back in the day, if you were like a gamer, people were like, you should probably like, play games in your mom's basement and eat pizza all day. Now with like crypto, it's like, you're probably like a scammer. Like you're probably like, what?
Do you really think that's like the mainstream perception of it?
I think so.
You think so? Yeah.
I think it's changed. It was changed about a year ago.
Yeah.
When things are going well. And there's just too many big blows. We had like the 3 Arrow Capital thing, then FTX. FTX, I think, was definitely like the biggest, problem. Final blow because Washington was, big with, SBF. Like everybody saw him as the golden child of regulation. FTX had an arena. They had all these celebrities, talk about this stuff. And so I think that right now that's what the public perception is.
Why do you think that's so different from like the .com bubble, housing crisis, all the financial companies that collapse on like a weekly basis? But seriously, like, because if you really dig through it, there's way more dirt and skeletons in traditional finance. But I mean, anytime something happens in crypto, it becomes a national story and a meme.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was talking with someone about comparing like how much money people lost in like these different kind of events. And I think part of it is the protection for the average person. Like Bernie Madoff ran off with a lot of money.
Just thinking about that.
But, the people that did invest in his thing, I know it's not like there's a lot more people affected from like ripple effects, but, it's a lot of institutional investors.
Yep. Well, it's a lot of billionaires. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah. And, housing crisis, the subprime mortgage was a big problem. Lots of folks who were average people also got hurt by that. But, at least like in both these situations, the governments kind of came in, bailed some people out. And there was some protections in place around like, SEC. There was some protection in place around who can, access the asset. Crypto is, part of the benefit of being decentralized is that kind of just anybody can participate.
Yeah.
And so I knew a lot of folks who were hurt really badly by like Luna and FTX.
Really?
They like just put a lot of their savings in and there was like no safeguard, right? Yeah. There was no safeguard. People were over leveraged. Like people were hella over leveraged.
Is it buying on leverage? Is that the main?
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of like, I think a lot of crypto is leveraged. Like one thing collapsed, leads to another thing collapsed, that's another thing collapsed. And so yeah, I think that's partially why. It's just like more people who were average people were hurt. And because crypto is also harder to grasp, like I know stocks is also kind of hard to grasp, but like how, like again, Bernie Madoff's thing was like I didn't think it's that big of a deal like for like average Joes, but like housing, you can like kind of understand the value of housing. With crypto, a lot of it was like, because it's unregulated, people were like pumping, like, like you talked about the Jake Paul thing. People were pumping and dumping. People were on like YouTube channels telling people to buy things. And it's like, nobody was stopping them.
These guys got caught for it.
Ooh, that was fun.
Do you know, how much do you know about how the Mets owners were involved in Bernie's thing?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know how.
You'll get a kick out of this. So with the Wilpons, who owned the Mets, were one of Madoff's biggest investors, right? So there was a player that was released in 2000 on the Mets, and they owed him $5.9 million, right?
Yeah.
In 2000. So instead of paying out the 5.9 they owed him, they agreed to pay him 1.19 million every July 1st from 2011 to 2035, when he'll be 72 years old. Instead of paying him instead of paying him the 5.9 million.
Yeah.
In 2000, one shot, they agreed from 2011 to 2035 to pay him 1.19 million, which is over almost 30 million, right?
Yeah.
They did that because the returns were so good for Madoff. They did the analysis and said, if we put that 5.9 million with Bernie, we'll make way more than whatever we pay this guy from 2011 to 2035.
That's crazy.
So in sports, we call it Bobby Bonilla Day. Every July 1st, he gets paid 1.19 million. It's one of the biggest jokes we have in sports. But it's like going back to what you said,
crazy.
The thought process of Wilpons. These are smart. I mean, these are billionaires, right?
Yeah,
that own a professional team. Like you said, crypto, the average person. This is like like people just laugh. Like this is so
So
stupid.
is the deal still on? Is he actually still getting paid?
He's still getting paid. So it'll stop when he's 72 in 2035. So every July 1st, 1.19 million hits his bank account.
That's
and
awesome.
the agent should probably get the most credit for this.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's good. The Wilpons were like, oh, the Madoff returns will exist forever.
Yeah.
I'll never, why would I give you 6 million now? I can give you 30 million over the course of 30 years. I'm making more. Off that.
That's crazy.
If I could get my salary like that, that would be nice.
Right.
The 150.
You want to negotiate that? It's probably a bigger red flag if they agree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was in like high school business class. I don't know if you guys ever took business class in high school. They always teach you what a Ponzi scheme is.
Yeah.
And you're like, why would anybody fall for this? like seriously.
Yeah.
It's like someone, and I just specifically remember this example. Someone, I think at the time, I'm not very old, so I think this Burning Madoff thing already happened in high school. And they're like, yeah, like somebody's promising you like 50%, 80% ARR on your like money. Like,
Yeah.
and you're like, yeah, obviously, like money doesn't grow on trees.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at, what was happening in the crypto bubble of like these like DAOs that were returning like 1,000% ARR, 800% ARR.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh yeah, like, and it's just like, wait.
It's going to exist forever.
It's going to exist forever.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so easy to be wrapped up in this stuff. And so, yeah, it's rough. It's rough because I think part of surviving the bear market, we've seen so many of our competitors fold.
Yeah.
In the last 2 months.
Really?
Like,
the last 2 months.
2 months.
Wow.
Let me think about it. One company was like this, company that raised lots of money. You guys know about this. Like the Wire guys they were supposedly acquired by Bolt for $1 billion.
Yeah.
And then they said they were shutting down. And then their CEO was saying they're running. But, it's that company kind of went tiny. And we know like 3 or 4 other kind of competitors were in this NFT checkout space who also were like, oh, ran out of money, burn out too fast. And so, I think part of surviving the bear market is more than just having runway. Like we have enough runway to last us for like years and years. And so we're fine. But what's hard is not, I think, the money piece. And like the folks we know who folded, some of them actually still had millions of dollars in their bank account, but they just like gave up because it sucks, right? Like
how do you go? You just give the money back?
You just give the money back. Yeah, just give the money back because it's like you look at the graphs. We're so used to every week going like, now it's going like this. And for some people, it's going like this. Like, it's hard. It's hard.
So you can tell us when to buy, right?
Sorry?
You can tell us when the right time.
Well, I don't know. It's tough to time the market, especially when our NFTs are not super speculative ones.
Yeah, but that's part of your job here, right? Is long term educating.
Yeah,
the public, even if it is a B2B product, like you have to do your part in kind of dispelling the bad eggs.
Yeah, and that's kind of, my goal this year. I think like one of the perception, this is going back to the big company, small company thing. Like, when I was at Twitch, the thing that I was drilled in on as a product leader was that the best product wins. It's like, it's all about being the better product. But when it's a startup, it's not about being the best product, I think we have one of the best products. I think objectively speaking, we have the best product on the market. No, I'm biased.
Yeah.
But
maybe a little bit.
Well, you said objectively. So
I think objectively. We have the most powerful developer tools, easiest to implement, and the most peace of mind from like a security architecture perspective. We have no single point of failure where even if we get hacked, nothing really happens to customers' assets.
Wow.
Which is like pretty cool,
Yeah.
So like objectively speaking, I think very good. Now, are we a mile above everyone else? Not really. We're like one of the leaders in the space, but we're not like crushing everyone else. And I think the reason being is we haven't been loud enough. We haven't been telling people about why our product is awesome. We haven't been celebrating all this. Like we've worked with so many awesome brands, platforms, games. But like the other day I was talking to like a company that works with a, really big French fashion brand. Okay. They haven't launched yet, so I can't say their name. But we were telling them, hey, we've worked with all these other really cool folks like, big gaming studios. We've worked with esports brands like Fnatic. We've done work with football clubs like Real Betis. Wow. Nobody knows about it. And it's like, it's because we don't talk about it. So We're trying to get better at that.
Is there a reason you don't talk about it?
I think it's, this is like
culture.
It's we have a big, like, very technical team. And so we just want to be heads down and building because we thought that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But this year, like, it's like, no, like, we got to be loud. We got to be loud because if people don't know about you, they're not going to use you. And ultimately, I think even thinking back to our own experiences, a lot of times you use a product, you'll probably first try the thing that you've heard about.
Yeah.
And if that thing addresses 70%, 80% of your needs, even if it's not the best, you probably won't do all the due diligence to find someone else.
Yeah.
So, like, I think we can help our customers solve their NFT related problems better than anyone else. But, that extra 20%, 30% that we're doing is not being recognized if they don't even know we exist. And so, So anyway, that was a big learning lesson for me as, like, a technical product person.
Yeah.
So it's like, damn, marketing and sales really, really important.
And the money going around. Right?
Yeah.
So there's a thing we do. I think this is a good segue. We do this rapid fire section.
Okay.
And so now you're talking about, like, the best thing or the biggest thing you learned as, like, a technical product person.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best advice you've ever gotten from anyone in terms of building product?
The best advice I've gotten about building product is probably from Emmett. So Emmett, founder of Twitch, worked with him very closely. When we were there to launch, we basically took the product we had that we built at our startup, the loyalty program, and launched it on Twitch. It's called Channel Points. For anybody, like, who watches Twitch, it's like in 97% of all the channels now. Yeah. It's, like, pretty awesome. And like, I think as I was kind of building that product out, I learned a lot from him about, like, what it means to be focused on the customer's needs. I think, like, Amazon has this really, really great philosophy, which is, like, work backwards from customers. And, like, I know that's like it's kind of cliche. And, like, honestly, I think a lot of really great advice is pretty cliche.
Yeah.
Because they're universal truths. And the difference is how you, like, apply it. And so I think at Twitch, the customer focus really was, they had this really interesting problem, right? They're like a platform. They're two-sided. They've got creators and they got fans. They made a decision really early on that creators are the ultimate customers. And so if you're being pulled by two different directions in terms of what the customer wants, you should focus on the creators.
Yeah.
And, like, I think like that, like, maniacal focus almost on, like, obsessing over the thing that creators care about is something, and every question, like, every time you make a decision and say, okay, how does this benefit the creators? How does this benefit the creators? Was something like we apply a lot at Paper. It's like we kind of say, okay, what does this product change mean for our developers?
Yeah.
And then secondarily, what does this mean for the viewers? And so a lot of times I think founders, people who are building product, you kind of get pulled into, like, your own mental model of the world. Doesn't really matter if it's not adding value to the end customer. And so really being focused on understanding that customer need and being very specific on what that need is. The more specific, the better. You know?
Yeah.
It's like credit card with email, very specific, right? Or like, So.
And then, what's the worst advice you ever received about building a product?
worst advice. I think generally I just try to wash away forget the worst advice. I think, like, the worst advice, I guess, not about building a product, but building a company that I think I've ever received, it's probably, like, writing everything down. Like, it is kind of like so at Twitch, we wrote product specs for every single thing that we did. And when I first started going back into startups, what I would do is also put everything down into a spec. Now, it's beneficial, and again, this is kind of what I said earlier. It's like there are some decisions where that, like, clarity is important, but then there's other places where you don't really need to exercise the level of clarity because the impact of that decision, if it's wrong, is not that high. So maybe let me like abstract to it one level higher. Is at Amazon there was this one leadership principle, which is leaders are right most of the time. While I think that's, like, nice, I actually don't really agree with it because I think, going back to, like, my earlier point, it's like if you're trying to be right every single time, you just end up being really slow. Because I do think if you're slower, you'll end up being right more often than not. But if you are trying to be right every time, it just means you don't make any decisions. And so maybe that's like a better way of saying the worst advice I've gotten is like, I think there's this concept in my head that to be a good leader, you just have to be right almost all the time. Whereas I think it's more important that you create an environment that allows your team to make a lot of decisions and be right more often than not on more decisions than being right with a few decisions. Maybe I come back here in a year and a half, a company's 10 times bigger, and I can say, now I have understood why that advice is good. And I think like that's generally like my take on like advice is I don't think any advice is ever bad, because I think when good intent, unless somebody's maliciously trying to tell you that, like to sabotage you, I think they probably have a personal experience that they've experienced where that advice was good. But the problem is just advice has so much context, context in like what the situation was, the time they like took that learning lesson, context in like maybe the space they're in, context in the people that they were working with, context in like the market. Was it good or is it bad? And like a lot of times, if you just kind of take advice blindly, then it's like doesn't work. And there's very, very, very few universal truths that are true. So I think like good leaders are right most of the time. Probably truer when it's a bigger ship and you're not trying to sink the Titanic. But if you're trying to build traction, grow, way more important to be right more often than not and just make more decisions.
That makes sense. And then what's the best thing you've ever spent your money on?
I think so I don't really spend much money buying stuff. I think the most expensive thing I bought was my car. So I guess like
what are you driving?
I just realized like a Model 3.
Okay.
And so like, classic San Francisco car. But I think like for me, I guess this is like not super interesting from like a business perspective, but I really do like driving. I think buying a car was a good investment. Now, I don't know if, buying a Tesla was the best investment because after I bought the car, they slashed prices by like 10% this year.
I thought they hold value well.
They
Isn't
did
that the whole
yeah. I bought it as I was first 6 months. Like, oh my god, my car's like worth more than when I bought it. It's great. And then this year, Elon cut the price of everything by 15%. So that was pretty bad. But I think like I grew up always in cities where I never needed to drive.
Yeah.
And so I always took public transit. And in SF, public transit is good, but it doesn't like connect you to a bunch of places. And so I didn't realize and like, how many cool things there are in the city until I got a car, because I just like by default ruled out those options as activities to do. So I guess, recency bias, but in the last 2 years, my best investment was buying a car.
And then the last question I have, you sold a company to Twitch. Why did you get back and try building something again?
There's like kind of two pieces to it. One is, the selling the company to Twitch is just, it was an acqui-hire. It wasn't like a big exit for everybody. And so like part of me feels like I just want to build something big. And I don't think I did that in the last company. And so there's just a hunger to almost prove myself a little bit, but like not to anybody else, but to myself that like I have the capabilities to build something massive versus like having to give up part of the way. And I think that's like the same level of hunger for a lot of folks on the team. Like we have like my co-founder, Edward, he also had a small exit before, also really passionate about building really big things. So it's kind of like we feel like we have a small win on our belt, but like we haven't really proved to ourselves we can do something big. That's like part of the hunger. Two is like, I think like working with really great people. There's a lot of really, really great people at Twitch as well. But like I feel like there are, personalities that thrive in larger companies different than personalities that thrive at smaller companies.
Yeah.
And I just generally I think I generally resonate with folks who are more successful at smaller companies because they're just more, I think generally like they're a little bit more creative, they're more driven, they're more hungry. And so that's like part of the reason is like wanting to make sure every day I'm just like working with people and I'm like, holy shit, like this guy's or this person is really, really awesome.
Yeah.
And then I think the last piece is almost a little bit of feeling like I have more autonomy over what my destiny is. I feel like, and maybe this is just my personal experience, but at larger companies, years of experience matter a lot, I think. And pedigrees, like degrees you have, also matter a lot.
Yeah.
And so it felt like I had to like go through these like different types of paths to get to the goals I want versus like building my own path. And like also, and so, you know, like that autonomy also mattered. And I think like, I guess that's the last thing is like, I generally am just pretty excited about where the world could be if people truly owned their digital things. Like, I think that's a pretty exciting world. I think it's going to be better for consumers. And like, you know, for me, like, because I play a lot of games and I spend a lot of my life digitally, you know, I've been like, I get a lot of my friends into playing games and I spend a lot of money and time there. And so being able to just say, hey, like, I earned this thing that's like worth a lot because I like grinded for it.
Yeah.
And being able to like trade it out for some real money, it's kind of nice, you know, being able to, you know, when my girlfriend's playing some games, being able to say, hey, like, you know, we both play Genshin and I've like got these characters that I've like spent money on that I don't really like, but she really likes.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I wish I could just transfer that over to her so she can like have a stronger character. Can't do any of that because the game is greedy, which understandably so. And they want to control the supply and monopoly of these assets. You know, that there's still a lot of like questions on how this all plays out because I also understand the counter argument of people saying, well, if games don't have this entire control over the entire experience, then maybe they make less money. And if they make less money, then they can't make as good of a game. But I don't know. I tend to think like there's a happy medium somewhere where like games can still make a lot of money and still have the resources to compete.
Yeah.
And so like that's exciting to me. And I also really think about how growing up, I've always spent more time playing games than like hanging out with people in real life, like in the digital world. And I think that's like, you know, I know like everybody gives a lot of flack to Facebook because they're like trying to build the metaverse and they're getting like their stock price is getting like just shit on because of because of like what they're doing. But I really also think that like the younger generation, the world is moving more and more towards a digital one. And so like being able to build a world where, or be a really big part of building the infrastructure for that, for like a new world is also kind of exciting, you know?
Yeah.
So like, I guess I know I gave a lot of reasons, but I think ultimately it's like the startup environment is more fun to me. And I'm very, very excited about kind of the future. And I think it's rare. I think it's very, very rare. I think AI is like an example of this too. Like there's very rarely like events that happen in the world that like truly change the way people live and the way people work. And I think like crypto is one of those, like crypto, metaverse, whatever. I think it's more like it's more like metaverse is the big change and crypto is like the infrastructure that's needed to power that.
Sure.
Like AI, I think it's super interesting because I think like there's a world where we change the way we think about work, kind of like the industrial revolution, you know?
Yeah.
And so both of these are like very exciting world changing events. And I feel like if I'm not playing a part in it and just being a cog in a machine, then it feels like I'm wasting my potential a little bit. So
you talked a lot about gamer. You're a world-class athlete.
Oh, I mean, I'm okay.
No, you are.
Yeah, I mean, I used to play a lot of badminton.
You traveled to, internationally.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was, I think the best I got to was like, I think second in Ontario for like, badminton, like doubles, boys doubles.
Yeah.
I was really young though. So I think I'm generally pretty good at racket sports. And then in college, I played squash and on the college team. But I was like pretty much a sub. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of parallels with sports and business.
Give us one. Give us the biggest parallel you see. Takeaway.
I think the biggest one is just how combative it is. You know, this is like also something that I had to come around to as like a technical product founder. It's like it's a fucking war out there. It's like dogfighting. Like, you know, it's like now I do Muay Thai. And I like, you know, get in the ring with my coach and I get my ass kicked and, you know, I try to kick some ass. But like, I think like when you're in a big company, you're insulated, especially when you're already a winner in the space.
Yeah.
It feels like everybody is competing, but you're just kind of like, there's the other competitor on the other side. You kind of look at each other in the eye, like awkwardly from time to time, but you keep doing your own thing. But at startups, like people will do a lot of, you know, sometimes kind of questionable things to win. And you kind of got to be prepared for it. You know, I think for us, our DNA makes us a little bit, I think, less aggressive, which means like we sometimes don't fight for a deal as much as like maybe one of our competitors, and we've like lost deals because of it. And like the way, so now we're kind of thinking about moving forward is like if you want to win in an ethical way in business, you kind of have to beat both the refs and the other team.
Yeah.
Because if you're like super proper and like you like, you know, also, you know, to be fair, let me kind of like caveat this is I don't know if anybody is like malintentioned. I think people just have a different like line of what they think is like the unspoken rules.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we have like a pretty high ethical bar of like, you know, we try to not talk about our competitors in a way that's like, you know, us dissing them. We don't go and, you know, do these things. And, you know, some companies have different rules for that.
Yeah.
And I think like in sports, it's like, you know, there are rules that you should abide by that you absolutely shouldn't cross. And then there is also things like, you know, like, do you tackle someone a little bit more harsh than not, you know, these kind of things. And so that's like, I think the thing that I'm trying.
Which you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are rivalries. Right.
And people like get rough. It's an adversarial environment.
Oh yeah.
It's like, you know, I think, you know, I remember a long time ago when I first got into crypto, I like had this tweet where it's like, oh man, it's like open pastures. Everybody is like working together to beat the Dave and Goliath. We're all small Daves beating the Goliath.
Yeah.
We're all like, let's all hold hands and be kumbaya and like, you know, make crypto big.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. But, you know, when you're competing with someone, there's also not a lot of that. And I think as a company, we're trying to find that identity a little bit. It's like how we definitely need to be more aggressive.
Yeah.
But like, to which extent do we feel like conscientious of like what's right or wrong? But anyway, that's
you'd be a good coach. You're a good. I want to hear like you guys' all hands calls because I'm ready to run through the wall right now. You point me, shoot me. I'll run. I'll tackle whoever you want. Like
I appreciate that.
I love it.
Yeah.
So where can people
Tell
find
you want me to hit
online?
him?
Yeah, I mean, people can. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's you know, just James Sun, but it's like James ZM Sun, I think. And then in terms of our company account, it's just Paper Checkout. Yeah, that's probably the best way to find me. Always down to chat. My DMs are open. So yeah, thanks for inviting me on the show.
Awesome. Of course. Well, everyone, thanks so much for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the YouTube things. We will see you next week.